You know that feeling when you're scrolling through social media at 11:30 at night, lying in bed with reading glasses perched on your nose, and you see another friend posting pictures from their European vacation? Or maybe it's their new kitchen renovation that cost more than your first car, their kid's graduation from some expensive private college, or just them looking incredibly relaxed and happy in what appears to be their perfectly organized home office. And there you are, still wearing the same pajamas you put on 3 days ago, wondering if you should be panicking about your retirement account, your mortgage balance, or the fact that you honestly can't remember the last time you felt financially secure about anything. Here's what's really messing with your head though. You're 53 years old, you've been working steadily for 3 decades. You make decent money, you pay your bills on time, and yet somehow you feel like you're failing at this whole financial success thing. You see people your age talking casually about their stock portfolios, their real estate investments, their retirement plans that involve traveling the world and pursuing hobbies, and you're wondering if there's some secret handbook that everyone got except you. Maybe you missed the class in college where they explained how to build wealth, or perhaps there's some financial literacy gene that you just weren't born with. My name is Keith, and I spend way too much time thinking about money, life transitions, and why some people seem to glide through their 50s like they've got everything figured out, while others feel like they're constantly playing catch-up with a game where nobody explained the rules. If you've ever found yourself lying awake wondering whether you're actually doing okay financially, or if you're secretly failing at this whole grown-up thing, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Because here's the thing that might surprise you, and it's something that took me years to understand myself. Most people in their 50s are doing much better financially than they realize, but they're so busy comparing themselves to unrealistic standards and social media highlight reels that they can't see their own progress. Picture this scenario, and tell me if it sounds familiar. You're at a dinner party, and somehow the conversation turns to retirement planning, as it always does when you put a bunch of 50-somethings in the same room. Someone mentions they've got $2 million saved. Another person casually drops that they paid off their mortgage 5 years ago, and now they're debt-free. A third person talks about their investment portfolio like they're Warren Buffett's protege, throwing around terms like asset allocation and rebalancing with the confidence of someone who's been managing money their entire life. And you're sitting there quietly doing the mental math on your own situation, feeling like maybe you should excuse yourself to go hide in the bathroom and have a small financial crisis. The thing is, you've got maybe $300,000 in your 401k, which feels both substantial and completely inadequate at the same time. Your house still has 15 years left on the mortgage, but at least you're not underwater on it. You've got some money in savings, though not as much as you think you should have by now. You're contributing to your retirement account every month, but you're not maxing it out because, well, life is expensive and there's always something that needs your financial attention. Your car is paid off, which feels like a victory, but it's also 8 years old, and you're starting to wonder how much longer it's going to last. In other words, you're doing okay, but you don't feel like you're crushing it. But here's what's really happening in that room, and this is something I wish someone had explained to me years ago. That person with $2 million saved, they might be house rich and cash poor, struggling to cover their monthly expenses because they put everything into their retirement accounts and have no liquidity for emergencies. The one who paid off their mortgage early, they might have missed out on years of investment growth because they put everything into their house instead of the stock market, and now they're realizing that their home equity isn't going to generate the income they need in retirement. And that investment expert throwing around financial jargon, they might be leveraged up to their eyeballs, taking risks that would make a casino owner nervous, constantly checking their portfolio and losing sleep over market volatility. Meanwhile, you're sitting there with what you think is an inadequate financial situation, not realizing that steady, consistent progress is actually the most reliable path to long-term wealth. You might not have the highest net worth in the room, but you're also not taking crazy risks or making decisions based on fear or greed. You're just plugging away, month after month, building something sustainable. Most people measure financial success in their 50s by looking at the wrong numbers entirely. They focus on net worth comparisons, which is like judging a movie based on its budget instead of whether it's actually any good. The average net worth for someone in their 50s is around $800,000, but that number is almost meaningless because it's skewed by people who inherited wealth, sold businesses, or made high-risk investments that happen to pay off. What really matters is something much simpler and much more encouraging than most people realize. If you can cover your basic expenses without panicking about every unexpected bill that shows up in your mailbox, you're already doing better than about 40% of Americans in your age group. Think about that for a second. Almost half the people your age are still living paycheck to paycheck, still calculating whether they can afford to fix their car or go to the dentist or replace their failing appliances. If you have any money saved for retirement, even if it feels embarrassingly small compared to what the financial magazines say you should have, you're ahead of 30% of your peers. And if you're consistently putting away something every month, even if it's just a couple $100s, you're in the top 25% of savers in your demographic. That's not because you're some financial genius who figured out secret investment strategies. It's because you've developed the most important wealth-building skill there is, which isn't picking stocks or timing the market or finding the perfect real estate deal. It's the ability to spend less than you make, month after month, year after year, regardless of whether your income goes up or down, regardless of what the economy is doing, regardless of what unexpected expenses pop up in your life. The transformation that happens when you realize this isn't just psychological, though the psychological component is huge. It's practical. When you stop measuring your progress against impossible standards set by personal finance gurus who assume everyone makes six figures and has no competing financial priorities, you start making better decisions about your actual situation. Instead of feeling hopeless about retirement because you don't have $1 million saved, you start calculating what you can realistically save over the next 15 years and discovering that it might actually be enough. Instead of being paralyzed by investment options because you're afraid of making the wrong choice, you start putting money into simple index funds that actually grow over time. Instead of avoiding financial planning altogether because it feels overwhelming, you start taking small, manageable steps that compound into real progress. There's a specific psychological phenomenon that happens to people in their 50s that financial advisors don't talk about nearly enough, and it has nothing to do with investment returns or savings rates. It's the reality that at 50, you finally understand what money actually costs. Not in terms of dollars and cents, but in terms of time, energy, and life satisfaction. When you're 30, spending $2,000 on something feels different because you think you have unlimited time to earn it back. When you're 50, that same $2,000 represents approximately 3 weeks of your life after taxes, and you're acutely aware that you don't have an infinite number of 3-week periods left. This shift in perspective, which can feel depressing at first, is actually one of the most powerful wealth-building tools you can develop. It makes you incredibly selective about what you spend money on, not because you've become cheap or miserly, but because you finally understand that every purchase is really a trade-off between money and time. That expensive coffee habit that costs $15 a day? You're not just spending $400 a month. You're trading roughly a week of your working life every month for the convenience of not making coffee at home. Maybe that's worth it to you, maybe it's not, but at least now you're making the decision consciously instead of just drifting into it. The people who seem to be doing well financially in their 50s aren't necessarily earning more money than everyone else. They're just better at recognizing these trade-offs and making intentional choices about them. They'll spend $3,000 on a vacation because they value experiences and time with their family. But they'll drive a 10-year-old car because they'd rather have that monthly payment working for them in an investment account. They'll pay for a house cleaner because their time is worth more than the cost of the service, but they'll meal prep on Sundays because they enjoy cooking and it saves them hundreds of dollars a month on takeout. They'll invest in quality tools or equipment that will last for decades, but they'll shop at discount retailers for everyday items that don't need to be premium quality. This kind of intentional spending isn't about depriving yourself of things you enjoy, it's about being strategic about where your money goes so that more of it ends up working for your future instead of just disappearing into lifestyle expenses that don't really improve your life. When you understand that every dollar you spend is a dollar that can't compound in your investment accounts, you start asking different questions about your purchases. Instead of "can I afford this?" you start asking, "is this worth delaying my retirement by a day, a week, a month?" Here's something that will probably make you feel better about your financial situation than any spreadsheet or calculator. If you're in your 50s and you're worried about money, that worry is actually a good sign. Not because financial stress is enjoyable or healthy, but because it means you're taking your future seriously and thinking realistically about the challenges ahead. The people who should actually be panicking are the ones who aren't thinking about retirement at all. They're the ones who assume everything will somehow work out without any planning or sacrifice on their part. Your financial anxiety means you understand that retirement isn't something that just happens to you, like catching a cold or winning the lottery. It's something you have to actively prepare for over many years, making deliberate choices about how you spend your time and money. The fact that you're conscious of the timeline, aware of the challenges, and motivated to make changes puts you miles ahead of people who are still operating under the fantasy that they'll figure it out later, or that somehow they'll be the exception to all the normal rules of financial planning. There's research from Fidelity showing that people who regularly worry about their retirement savings end up with significantly more money than people who never think about it. Not because worry itself generates wealth, obviously, but because worry motivates action. People who are concerned about their financial future are more likely to increase their savings rates, more likely to educate themselves about investing, more likely to make sacrifices in their current lifestyle to fund their future security, and more likely to seek professional advice when they need it. This is why that person at the dinner party who casually mentions their $2 million might actually be in worse shape than you think. If they're not worried about their financial future, they might not be accounting for inflation, healthcare costs, taxes in retirement, or the possibility that they'll live longer than expected and need their money to last 30 or 40 years instead of 20. Meanwhile, you're lying awake calculating whether you'll have enough money to maintain your lifestyle in retirement, which means you're actually more likely to take the steps necessary to make sure you do. The sweet spot isn't having no financial concerns at all, which is either a sign of extreme wealth or dangerous ignorance. It's having enough concern to stay motivated and engaged with your financial planning, but not so much that you're paralyzed by anxiety and unable to enjoy your current life. If you're thinking about your financial future regularly, adjusting your spending based on your goals, and making decisions with your long-term security in mind, you're already demonstrating the mindset that leads to financial success, even if your current net worth doesn't look impressive compared to someone else's highlight reel. Let's talk about something nobody mentions when they're discussing retirement planning, but everyone experiences in their 50s. The weight of being financially responsible not just for yourself, but potentially for multiple generations at once. You might still be helping your adult children with student loans, cell phone bills, car insurance, or just general life expenses while they get established in their careers and figure out how to be financially independent adults in an economy that's much more expensive than the one you navigated in your 20s. At the same time, you're starting to think about your own parents, who might need financial assistance for medical care, home maintenance, prescription medications, or just the rising cost of living on a fixed income that seemed adequate when they retired but doesn't stretch as far as it used to. This sandwich generation pressure creates a unique financial challenge that previous generations didn't face to the same extent. Your parents could probably assume that they'd stop financially supporting their children by the time those children reached their early 20s and got established in their careers. They also didn't need to worry as much about funding their own parents' care because lifespans were shorter, healthcare was less expensive, and extended care options were more limited. You're dealing with both responsibilities simultaneously, often while trying to accelerate your own retirement savings because you know you can't count on the same level of social safety net that your parents relied on. But here's what's interesting and encouraging about this situation. If you're managing to save anything at all for retirement while also providing financial support to other family members, you're demonstrating a level of financial discipline and organizational skill that most people never develop. You're essentially running a small family financial services company, balancing multiple priorities, managing cash flow between different needs, making strategic decisions about resource allocation, and somehow keeping everyone's financial needs met without completely sacrificing your own future. Those skills translate directly into better personal financial management once some of these external pressures reduce. When you no longer need to support adult children because they've finally achieved financial independence, or when you're no longer helping aging parents because they've either become financially stable or passed away, all of that organizational skill and financial discipline can be redirected toward your own wealth building, often with dramatic results. People who successfully navigate the sandwich generation years often see their savings rates accelerate rapidly in their late 50s and early 60s because they've developed such strong money management habits under pressure. The fact that you can juggle multiple financial responsibilities and still maintain your own household, still contribute to your retirement, still pay your own bills on time, means you have a sophisticated understanding of money management that will serve you incredibly well as you transition into retirement. You're not just learning to manage your own finances, you're learning to optimize limited resources across multiple competing priorities, which is exactly the skill you'll need when you're living on a fixed income in retirement. There's a quiet revolution happening among people in their 50s that doesn't make the financial news, but it's probably the most significant wealth-building trend of our time. It's the realization that you don't actually need as much money as you thought to live well. Not because people are lowering their standards or giving up on their dreams, but because they're finally old enough and experienced enough to distinguish between what they want and what they think they should want based on societal expectations and marketing messages. In your 30s and 40s, you're still heavily influenced by external expectations about success. You feel pressure to have the right kind of house in the right neighborhood, to drive a car that reflects your professional status and doesn't embarrass you in the company parking lot, to take vacations that look impressive on social media, to send your kids to the best schools you can afford, and to maintain a lifestyle that signals to the world that you're winning at this whole adult life thing. There's this constant sense that you need to keep up with your peers, that falling behind in the lifestyle arms race means you're somehow failing. By your 50s, most of that noise starts to fade away. You've lived long enough to see that the people with the most impressive-looking lifestyles aren't necessarily the happiest or most satisfied with their lives. You've watched friends struggle with huge mortgage payments on houses they barely have time to enjoy, seen people stressed out about car payments for vehicles they only drive to work and back, Witnessed colleagues who are so busy earning money to support their expensive lifestyles that they never actually get to enjoy the fruits of their labor. You start to realize that a lot of what you thought you wanted was really just what you thought you should want. This shift in perspective is incredibly liberating financially because it means you can optimize your spending around what actually matters to you instead of what you think should matter to you based on some external scorecard of success. Maybe you realize that you'd rather live in a smaller house with a paid-off mortgage than a larger house with decades of debt remaining. Maybe you discover that you're happier driving a reliable used car and investing the money you would have spent on car payments. Maybe you find that you prefer simple pleasures like cooking at home, gardening, reading, or spending time with friends and family over expensive entertainment and dining out. When you start making financial decisions based on your actual preferences rather than societal expectations, something magical happens to your savings rate. Money that was previously going toward things that provided only marginal satisfaction starts flowing toward your future security instead. You're not depriving yourself of anything meaningful. You're just redirecting resources from things that don't actually improve your life toward things that do. This is how people in their 50s often find that they can dramatically increase their savings rates without feeling like they're making painful sacrifices. They're not cutting back on the things they truly value. They're just stopping the automatic spending on things they never really cared about in the first place. The most underrated sign that you're doing well financially in your 50s has nothing to do with your bank account balance, your investment returns, or your net worth calculation. It's your ability to sleep through the night without waking up in a panic about money. This might sound like an impossibly low bar to set for financial success, but if you've ever experienced real financial stress, the kind that keeps you awake at 3 in the morning running worst-case scenarios through your head, you know that money worries have a way of infiltrating every aspect of your life, especially your sleep. When you're truly struggling financially, every unexpected expense feels like a potential catastrophe. Your car making a weird noise doesn't just mean you might need a repair. It means you might need to choose between fixing your transportation and paying your rent, or between getting your car fixed and buying groceries, or between handling this emergency and having any money left over for the dozen other things that need your financial attention. A routine medical appointment doesn't just mean taking time off work. It means worrying about copays, potential procedures, follow-up visits, prescription costs, and whether your insurance will actually cover everything you need or if you'll be facing bills you can't afford. This constant low-level anxiety creates a state of hypervigilance that makes deep, restorative sleep almost impossible. Your mind keeps running through financial calculations, trying to figure out how to make everything work, preparing for disasters that might or might not happen. You wake up tired even after 8 hours in bed because your brain never really got to rest. This isn't just about feeling exhausted. Chronic financial stress has real health consequences that compound over time, affecting your immune system, your cardiovascular health, your mental well-being, and your ability to make good decisions during the day. But when you have even a modest financial cushion, when you know you can handle most of the emergencies that pop up in daily life without derailing your entire financial plan, when you have systems in place for managing your money and confidence in your ability to handle whatever comes up, your nervous system finally gets permission to relax. You might still have concerns about long-term goals like retirement planning or major expenses like home repairs, but you're not operating in survival mode anymore. You've moved from defense to offense in your financial life. This psychological shift has compound benefits that extend far beyond just feeling better about money. When you're well-rested and not constantly stressed about financial survival, you make better decisions in general. You're more focused and productive at work, which can lead to better performance reviews and higher compensation. You're more patient and present with your family and friends, which improves your relationships and overall life satisfaction. You're more creative in solving problems because your mental bandwidth isn't consumed by financial anxiety. You're more optimistic about your future, which makes you more likely to invest in yourself and take calculated risks that can improve your situation. All of these improvements in your overall well-being tend to create positive feedback loops that improve your financial situation even further. Perhaps the most counterintuitive sign that you're doing well financially in your 50s is that you've stopped obsessing over your investment performance. This doesn't mean you've become careless or inattentive to your money. It means you've developed the confidence and perspective that comes from understanding the difference between what you can control and what you can't control in your financial life. When you're younger and just starting to build wealth, it's easy to get caught up in the excitement of trying to beat the market, picking individual stocks based on tips from friends or articles you read online, timing your investments based on economic news and market predictions, or constantly adjusting your portfolio based on whatever financial guru is getting attention that week. There's this sense that if you just find the right strategy, pick the right investments, time the market correctly, you can accelerate your wealth building and reach your goals faster than people who are just plodding along with boring, conventional approaches. But by your 50s, if you've been consistently saving and investing for years, you start to realize that all of that activity is mostly just noise. The real wealth building happens through the boring, unglamorous process of putting money away consistently, investing it in diversified, low-cost funds, and letting compound interest do its work over time. You discover that your investment returns matter much less than your savings rate, and that time in the market beats timing the market almost every single time. People who are actually financially secure in their 50s have usually settled into a simple, sustainable investment strategy that they can stick with regardless of market conditions. They might review their portfolio once or twice a year, rebalance when things get significantly out of alignment, and make gradual adjustments as they get closer to retirement and want to reduce risk. But they're not checking their account balances daily or losing sleep over market volatility. They understand that short-term fluctuations in their investment values are just part of the process, not emergencies that require immediate action or signs that their long-term plan isn't working. This calm, steady approach to investing is often more valuable than any particular investment strategy because it prevents the emotional decision-making that destroys wealth over time. When the market drops 20% in a year, they don't panic and sell everything at the bottom. When the market goes up 30%, they don't get overconfident and take excessive risks or assume the good times will last forever. They just keep doing what they've been doing, making their regular contributions, maintaining their asset allocation, trusting that their consistent, long-term approach will serve them well over the decades. The peace of mind that comes from having a simple, sustainable financial plan can't be overstated. Instead of constantly wondering if you're doing the right thing with your money, constantly second-guessing your investment choices, constantly feeling like you need to be more active or more sophisticated or more aggressive with your investing, you can focus your mental energy on the things that actually matter, like enjoying your current life, maintaining your relationships, pursuing interests and hobbies that bring you satisfaction, and making the most of these years when you're healthy and energetic and still have time to create the retirement you want. Now, let's get practical about what financial success actually looks like in your 50s, because I think a lot of people have unrealistic expectations about where they should be at this stage of life. You don't need to have $1 million saved to be doing well. You don't need to own your home free and clear. You don't need to be maxing out every possible retirement account or have a perfect investment portfolio that would impress a financial advisor. What you need is momentum. You need to be consistently putting money away for your future, even if it's not as much as you think you should be saving. You need to have some kind of emergency fund, even if it's smaller than the 6 months of expenses that everyone recommends. You need to be thinking about your retirement and making plans, even if those plans are still rough and subject to change. You need to be living below your means, even if your means aren't as generous as you wish they were. The compound effect of these habits, maintained over time, is what creates real financial security. It's not about hitting some magic number or achieving some perfect financial state. It's about building systems and habits that serve you well over the long term, regardless of what happens with the economy, your career, your health, or your family situation. Most people underestimate how much progress they've made because they're comparing their current situation to some idealized future state instead of looking back at where they started. If you've been working steadily for 30 years, if you've been saving something consistently for most of that time, if you've avoided major financial disasters and kept your debt under control, you've accomplished something significant. You might not feel rich, but you're building the foundation for financial independence in a way that's sustainable and authentic to who you are. So there you have it. Being financially successful in your 50s isn't about having $1 million in the bank or driving a luxury car or owning a house that looks like it belongs in a magazine. It's about developing the habits, mindset, and perspective that create long-term security and satisfaction. It's about understanding that money is a tool for creating the life you actually want, not a scorecard for proving your worth to other people or keeping up with some arbitrary standard of success. If you can pay your bills without constant anxiety, if you're saving something regularly for your future, if you make financial decisions based on your own values rather than external pressures, if you can sleep peacefully most nights without worrying about money, and if you're making steady progress toward your long-term goals even if that progress feels slower than you'd like, you're doing better than you probably think. The compound effect of these seemingly small achievements is what creates real wealth over time, and more importantly, it's what creates the peace of mind and life satisfaction that money is supposed to provide. You might not feel rich right now, but you're building something valuable and sustainable. That's not just smart financial planning. That's wisdom. And wisdom, more than any particular dollar amount in your investment account, is what will serve you well in the years ahead. Keep doing what you're doing, stay consistent with your efforts, trust the process, and remember that slow and steady really does win the race when it comes to building lasting financial security.